Introducing Northwest artist Lilli Mathews. Lilli was born in Joplin, Missouri, and raised in Kansas City. From her earliest days as a child, she displayed a proclivity to art, using whatever materials were available to a child during the Great Depression, like burnt sticks, coal, and pieces of plaster. Her first scholarship was awarded by Kansas City Art Institute when she was 12 years old, based upon recommendations of her teachers and this sculpture of a colt. At age 18, she was awarded first place in the National Art Honor Society, leading to further scholarships and continued study at the Kansas City Art Institute. This was followed by study at the Art Students League in New York City, where she studied under Edward Lanning, Reginald Marsh, and others. Her major instructor there was Yasu Kuniyoshi, whose works are found in major museums all across the country. She also studied art at UCLA, St. Louis University, and later studied Northwest Native Art and Art History under Tom Schlotterbeck at Western Washington University. Her informal training, often no less intense than the formal, was lifelong. She was a voracious reader and an insatiable student fueled by a compelling intellectual curiosity. The launch site for her career in art production and display was the Petit Pigalle Gallery in St. Louis, Missouri in 1953, where she had her first solo show. This list of solo and group shows, numbering 20, is very possibly incomplete. Note that her early 60s show in Yakima included encaustics. This was at a time well before the more recent resurgence of interest in that difficult medium. Her one-person show at the Whatcom Museum of History and Art was a major achievement. And note her repeated exhibits, 6 times in 7 years, at the highly respected Nagatani Gallery in Burlington, where she combined with such Northwest notables as Paul Havis, Paul Horiuchi, Philip McCracken, and others. She was a jurist or solo judge on 8 occasions, including the Yakima State Fair twice, Children's Art Exhibit at the Bellingham Mall, Linden State Fair twice, Bellingham Grange Show painting category, and Ski to Sea Art painting category. She taught individuals and classes, was a guest speaker in Ferndale and Linden schools, and conducted workshops in which she illustrated the encaustic method and the egg tempera medium. Her 3 decades of extensive art production and her community involvement in the Northwest began to slow in the mid-1990s due to several circumstances, including the onset of health issues, changing domiciles, and some disillusionment with the merchandising, legal, and political business of art sales, for which she was certainly untrained. Her passion was to produce art, and she continued with this passion throughout her declining years. When she died in February 2011, she left her home and studio filled with over 500 works of art in various stages of completion. A photographic collection of these items was produced the following year, called The Creative Art of Lilli Mathews. What sort of artist was she, and how do we classify or understand her art? In retrospect, there seem to be at least 4 unwritten guidelines to which she adhered. Her predominant focus was on nature and the natural world, and most of her works could be categorized as interpretive landscapes. She seldom painted portraits or included people in her works. She was not interested in doing what a camera could do better. Typically, her production began with plein air sketching. She studied carefully and observed attentively until the scene before spoke to her. She usually started with the question, "What's happening here?" Plein air sketching was essential for that process, and this in turn resulted in her leaving nearly 60 sketchbooks crammed with notes and sketches. When beginning a painting, she could be observed stretching and preparing her Belgian linen canvas, followed by a tonal underpainting. She then blocked out major components, checking the interplay between lights and darks, integration, balance, negative space, and focal points. Often these elements were reviewed by rotating the canvas and noting the visual impact in that upside-down position. In this, she was applying some basic elements of objective abstract art. It might be helpful to visualize a continuum with non-objective abstract art at one end and photographic realism at the other. While Lilli tended to avoid non-objective abstract art, such as produced by Klee, Pollock, and others, and objective abstraction, such as Picasso, she understood and often used the principles of abstraction in her composition. To the viewer, this is a subtlety often unnoticed, yet it was typically the foundation on which was built a more obvious and observable adherence to the principles of 19th century Impressionism. Here is what she wrote when she visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. I stayed alone at the Met for almost 4 hours in the Impressionist wing. I felt alone with the masters I love, then light-hearted enough to move fast around the room, then around the room again very slowly. Then I felt furious to think that this is necessary to my very life, and I had not seen them in so long a time. Then, when I recognized my self-pity, I became happy and lost again in the works which so feed me. Certainly her heroes were the Impressionists. She became skilled at using the Impressionist techniques of looser handling and pure color accentuation, sometimes by introducing colors not necessarily evidenced, but essential in conveying impact. Close-ups of these two works illustrate a kinship with the Impressionist techniques. In many ways, Lilli was a free spirit propelled by a rather stereotypical artist temperament. That is, she had dramatic swings of concentration, mood, and creativity. Lilli sometimes struggled to coordinate the demands of being wife and mother and artist. She craved unobstructed time in her studio or in the field, where she constantly studied, experimented, sketched, and produced. She was a fearless experimenter, and one of the most striking characteristics of her artistic endeavors is the amazing diversity of techniques and media she employed. There were 18 different media used for works shown in the catalog, and another 18 used in combination, that is, 36 differing ways of presenting her vision. Here are a few examples. Colored pencil, oil bar, acrylic, pastel, oil pastel, watercolor, ink wash, ink, charcoal and pastel, egg tempera, encaustic monotype, tissue paper collage, watercolor with wax resist, pencil and pastel. Add to these her works in textures, and here are 3 examples. Wasp nest, seashells, and sycamore bark. Here are some examples of her rock art. And here are 3 examples of carving and painting common wallboard. Certainly she excelled in the use of the encaustic medium. Here are some examples of that. Lilli developed an illustrated manual for encaustic artists and invented a color stick mold. She also developed her own light bulb heated encaustic stove for the production of encaustic monotypes. And now a few comments about the pictures selected for showing in the Museum of Northwest Art in La Conner, Washington. Early fog, Burroughs Bay. We bought a lot toward the south end of Burroughs Bay and took several weeks clearing the ground for our new home. One day upon our arrival, the fog over the water, looking west, was very thick and dark, a roiling and impenetrable mass. As we looked northward toward skyline, we began to see lights as the fog lightened. Looking further north, the fog was lifting and brightening as it swept over the island. Flowering Grove. This triptych was loaned to the Bellingham Golf and Country Club for display so members could see and express their responses before the next board meeting, during which they would vote to purchase or not. The club selected a wall which nicely accommodated the 7-foot width of the piece. A few days after it was displayed, the place caught fire. Firemen rushed in, saw the art, and removed it from the building, but that wall and the entire interior of the club was gutted. We were very happy to get this painting home. Old Farm. Frankly, I'm sorry, but I know almost nothing about this work, except that it is an encaustic, the medium in which Lilli loved to work. Fog at Gilligan's Creek. Gilligan's Creek flows northward into the Skagit River, upstream from Cedro-Woolley. I was fishing for steelhead at this spot late one chilly, gray afternoon, while Lilli was nearby sketching. I have her field sketch for this work, which was done as the sun was settling through the fog and mist and trees toward the horizon. Esther Reed Daisies. This encaustic over oil on canvas is another of many of her works about which I know little. I do know that we had Esther Reed daisies in our yard, and they were strong, large, very bright and cheerful, and, in a word, impressive. Soft Trestle. This oil on canvas was sketched near the mouth of Squalicum Creek in Bellingham, very near the current plywood plant. It was one of several large paintings which were prepared for Lilli's one-person show at the Whatcom Museum of History and Art. This show was displayed in the Rotunda Room, and her paintings adorned that entire oval room. The train trestle has since been redone and no longer looks like this. Untitled. This oil on canvas on board is the last full painting Lilli produced prior to her debilitating stroke, and as such has special meaning to the family. It was inspired by a view from our new home in Anacortes. Possible sunbreaks. This alkyd on canvas was inspired by the view from Interstate 5 just south of Bellingham. As you head south from that city, you immediately begin a slow climb to Samish Pass, just before the road drops toward Lake Samish. As you're climbing, you can notice a large valley to the west. The top of the ridges surrounding the valley are often enshrouded in clouds, but on occasion the sun bursts through, illuminating tentatively small patches of foliage. This painting was entered into the 6th Northwest International Art Competition at Watkin Museum of History and Art in 1986. Of the 43 jury-selected works chosen in the painting category, this piece was awarded honorable mention, the equivalent of third place. Before the bulldozers. This encaustic conveys her concern for the ravages of nature which take place as civilization makes progress. Too often she found places to sketch and observe nature, often a place of relative seclusion, only to find that upon her return the special place had been obliterated to make room for some man-made project. This encaustic was chosen for the face page of her catalog and remains a family favorite. Museum-grade copies on canvas at Ziclays are available for purchase. New Halem Mosaic. This oil and encaustic was sketched in the New Halem campground on the North Cascade Highway. What impressed Lilli was the sun patches, filtered by the branches, forming a mosaic pattern on the ground. Southtown, Bellingham. This colored pencil work was inspired by the dramatically changing elements of water, clouds, and light patterns in this view from Cliffside Drive toward the Fairhaven area. After the Rain, Nooksack Lowland. This oil on canvas is an excellent example of Lilli's ability to use color somewhat in the Impressionist style, even when vivid colors were absent. Whether her subject was simple or complex, and regardless of the media chosen, Lilli wanted to convey through her art a sense of respect for the elegance of the natural world, helping us to see more clearly and feel more deeply about the balance, tranquility, serenity, and compelling beauty which is ours to experience.